Hey everyone, this is Nadine, Realtor ATX, and this is episode 3 of Real Talk. Welcome. I'm here with Lana Horak, a loan originator with Motto Mortgage, as promised, and we're going to talk to you today about down payment assistance programs. And full disclosure, Motto Mortgage is an affiliate of Remax, but that is just a great resource for us to have access to all the time. Thank you, Lana. Thanks for coming
You're so
in. Really
welcome.
appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
So, I heard you are a bit of a nerd. Can you tell us something about that?
Um, well, I'm very detail oriented. I enjoy the nitty gritty, but I think where it ultimately is coming from is that, like so many others years ago, when I used to dream of homeownership, the whole process was a bit of uh, a secret where it wasn't
Yeah.
clear, and I didn't feel like I could just take a lender's time to ask questions if I wasn't ready, and there weren't as many information on the internet. So now I'm really passionate about educating. I like to take my time with clients to explain pros and cons and um, be transparent about programs, processes, etc. And yeah.
I like that. That's great. So you basically, there was a need, you needed something, and you became it basically. You needed more, to know more, to be more informed, to just, feel more comfortable and confident going forward and doing these things, that are very daunting. We all know that. And so you just became that person.
Yes, and please, if you're watching this and you're wondering, lenders, brokers will be happy to talk to you and answer your questions, good ones. So don't be shy. You might be thinking to buy maybe in a year or two, but don't think you're wasting our time. You're not. So
That's great. That's good to know. So, everyone, please reach out to your experts. Reach out to Lana. Reach out to me, and we'll get you some help. All right. So, today again, we're going to talk about down payment assistance programs. So, maybe you could tell us exactly what is a down payment assistance program.
right. So if you're looking to purchase a property and you'd like to take out a mortgage, you will usually need um, some sort of down payment, a percentage of the home price. That has to be your own money. Um, and this is where these programs come in. So most of the time they cover down payment. Sometimes they can cover closing costs as well. And sometimes it's a percentage of the purchase price, or it can be a set amount. It depends program to program.
Okay.
Also, they tend to be government issued,
Okay.
so or sponsored.
Are there other types of DPAs that aren't government sponsored?
Yes, there are um, certain banks, credit unions that will have their private 100% financing as well.
Okay. So that's great. All right. So then, if that's the case, and I know you're saying there are government grants and then there are private, so do I have to pay the money back?
It depends. So these ZPA programs are different. If you've heard about one structure or read about one, don't assume that that's how they all work, because they can be all different. And really, the two main structures are, it can be either a grant or a gift, so that money you wouldn't have to pay back, or it's a second loan. It creates an extra lien on the property. Now, the difference is that if you are applying for a grant or gift that you don't need to repay, qualifying might be harder,
Okay.
and there might be restrictions as well.
Okay.
You might need to stay in the property for 3 years, 5 years,
That's great.
and so on. Whereas if it's a second loan, it's easier to qualify for, and there are usually less restrictions. It depends also, because it could be a second loan that you're repaying at the same time you're paying for your first mortgage.
Okay.
It could be a deferred payment.
Okay.
Second, so you're not paying for it, only if you decide to move out and sell, and then you will pay it off from the proceeds. Or it could be a forgivable second.
Wow.
So if you stay in the property for a set amount of time, usually it can turn into basically a gift. You won't have to.
Wow, that's amazing. So that's great. So there's a lot of options with the DPA. I mean, you might not have to pay for it. You may not have to pay it back at all. You may not have to pay it until you sell it, or you may be paying it while you're paying your mortgage. So those are several options, or it even could become a gift down the road. So those are that's all great options. All right. So then, what are the requirements? How do I get DPA? Do I qualify for down payment assistance?
Right. So there are requirements. Usually, you're looking at a 620 or higher FICO score.
Okay.
There's usually a debt to income ratio limit that might be stricter
Then with a conventional.
Yes.
Okay.
There's also income limitations, so there might be a restriction on your income has to be at a percentage of the area median income. That's an important one to watch out for. So as far as qualifying requirements, most people heard about down payment assistance programs that are targeted to first-time homebuyers.
Right. That was going to be a question.
Right. But there are other ones where the requirement might be that you need to buy in a certain neighborhood or area.
Okay.
There are also down payment assistance programs for certain professions. Think first responders, teachers, nurses.
Wow, I did not know that. That's so
Right.
great. Okay, so down payment assistance programs are pretty complicated then in terms of once you get into them. It's sort of there's an array of just options and ways to go
Yes.
with this.
Absolutely.
And so if you're a straight up investor though, there's just no way for you to get this? It would be very difficult, or?
Not really.
Okay.
So because most of the DPAs tie into an FHA loan, that means you have to live at the property.
In the property for some period of time.
Right.
Okay.
There could be a scenario where you can purchase, say, a duplex,
Right.
triplex, etc., and you live in one. That could be a scenario.
Okay.
Or if you can still take a roommate, by the way, with FHA. So if you have enough rooms.
Right, sure. Okay,
Yes.
so that makes sense.
It's not quite a property investment, but
Okay. All right, so but it's not just for first-time home buyers. If you've had a home, maybe does it have to be that it's been 3 years since you've done the program or any type of restriction like that before you could get down payment assistance again? Let's say you're a second-time home buyer for your primary residence.
so, right, if you are a first-time home buyer, that means you haven't owned in 3 years. So do you mean if...
So if let's say this isn't my first time,
Right.
it has to be 3 years before I could get down payment assistance again?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so that just clarifies that.
If the requirement for that program is that you have to be a first-time home buyer. There are programs where you don't have to be a first-time home buyer.
Okay.
But since they tie into FHA loans, they have to be primary residences.
Okay, great. All right, so that's good. All right, so now let's get into the cons. Are there any negative aspects to down payment assistance programs?
There are. So although they might seem as free money, they rarely are. So we touched on some of the restrictions. You might need to stay in the property for a while.
Right.
It might mean a lower interest rate or extra fees. So usually down
Does it
payment
mean
is
lower interest rates or higher interest?
higher.
Okay, so
So
higher interest rates or extra fees.
yes.
Okay.
So it depends. The better DPA programs where it looks more like free money are quite restrictive, whereas the more flexible ones will have usually higher interest rates.
Okay. So when we're looking at the DPAs, just, it depends on your circumstance. Maybe a highly restrictive DPA still works for you if you're struggling to make the closing costs, or you just want your first home and there's just so many obstacles in your way, and this DPA that's maybe a little more restrictive, it might still work. However, if you have some flexibility, you don't mind paying a little bit more, then maybe go for one that isn't quite as restrictive.
Right, and DPAs are, I think, great to strengthen your position as a home buyer versus relying on a DPA to create your purchasing power. So you would put yourself in a very vulnerable position if you didn't have any savings and you would expect to purchase a home only using a DPA. So that's not recommended. You should have at least 3 to 6 months of expenses saved as emergency. But so you have some savings already for down payment and closing, but you went ahead and qualified for a DPA just in case. That could be a good idea.
So let's say I have already put together $10,000 to $20,000 in my savings, then a DPA could be great for me, because then I'm going to be able to maybe hold on to that money a little bit for, as you say, emergency fund or closing costs.
Right.
Okay. All right. So that's great. So then let's go over it. I'm sure we already have the pros of the DPA.
I actually have more cons.
More cons? Oh, okay. That's good. Let's get all the information. We don't want to go in with full knowledge. We want full knowledge. So what are the other cons?
So this is something that not many people consider, but utilizing a DPA slows down your equity building. So you're going to purchase a property with none of your own money. That means in the beginning, your equity will be built up very slowly. If you've ever looked at an amortization schedule or table, you would see that in the beginning, your monthly payment is going mostly towards interest, and a very small proportion of that is going toward
right.
Equity.
In a normal amortization, that's the way that
Correct.
works, of course.
And that's with most loans.
Right.
It's just the way it is, but and as we mentioned, DPAs are usually tied into FHA.
Right.
So a lot of people have a game plan to refi into conventional down the line. Now, you would like to have at least or around 10% of equity to refi. And if you looked into your amortization table, you would see that it would take several years to get there if you weren't paying any extra money toward your principal. So to have some down payment would pay off down the line.
Okay.
When you decide
If you need to
that the
refinance.
prices are too small and you want to sell, etc., you want to upgrade, refi, yes.
Okay. So that's definitely a negative. So you're basically saying that if you put on this DPA, it's going to slow down that amortization even more than a normal conventional. Or just because you're not putting down enough down payment, then that cuts into your equity gain down the road. It'll take you longer to build that up.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So you would need to have a plan. How are you going to put in extra?
Got it. So maybe as you're paying your mortgage, you might want to think about adding more just to get to that 10% equity that you're talking about for the refinance.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then, are there any other cons?
It would depend, really.
Okay.
It would depend on the program. So with the client, we would sit down and I would explain the different structures and options, what would work better for their shorter plans, longer term ideas, and what's a drawback for one person might not be a drawback for you. It
Right.
just depends on your circumstances.
Exactly. As I always say, you just have to check and have someone look at your specifics and determine what it's going to look like for you.
Yes.
All right. So then, are there any pros?
That wasn't smooth. Of course. So a DPA could allow someone to get in the game faster, get in their own property quicker, and stop renting, which would stabilize basically the biggest line item in their budget, right? Rent goes up every year versus your mortgage payment remains the same.
Right.
Taxes, insurance might fluctuate, but your monthly mortgage payment is the same.
Okay. Exactly.
The other pro would be that although slowly, you could start to build your own equity. When you rent, there's no equity in that.
Exactly. Exactly. There's no investment. It's just money lost. That's gone. Where at least if you are putting it into your own home, you're just making an investment in your own future. So, I mean, that just to me makes so much more sense. That's how I think about it in terms of my own real estate journey. All right. So that's a lot for us to take in. Are there any alternatives to down payment assistance programs that you like?
Yes, there are certain loan programs that require zero down payment, such as VA for our military personnel, USDA. There's also what we call lease to own. That can have a bit of a bad reputation. We work with a reputable corporation who's been doing lease to own for about 15-20 years. So they really had time to refine the structure. And with this program, although you don't own the property, you're building up to that point over a course of 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
And you build up your down payment and closing costs.
And you're building that up through your rent payments.
Correct.
Your lease payments, I should say, in this case.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So that's an amazing program, and so I'll put something down below to a link to Lana, a link to this program as well, if you want a little more information. That's great. All right. So where should people go then to find these DPAs in their area? Is there a site? Do they just have to go to their brokers, to a mortgage broker or their banks? How do they find these DPAs?
Right. So people could go directly to the issuing entity or sponsor, and there's a website where you can see all the programs available in your state, county, city. We'll link this website.
Yeah, I will definitely put that at the bottom as well.
Somewhere
So is that something is there a general website where anyone can just go to and then look for their state sites?
Right.
Okay, that's perfect.
It's HUD's website.
Okay, great.
The U.S.
Yeah,
Department
perfect.
of Housing Urban Development. So that's one way of starting this journey. You could also ask your local bank or credit union if they have any 100% financing options available. If you decided not to source your own grant or program yourself, you could go to a lender, and they have DPAs sometimes in-house. We are a broker. We have about 25-30 wholesale relationships, and out of that, I think currently 5 of them are doing DPAs in-house. So that would be a good way to apply with a broker who can shop these programs around for you and compare. Another benefit to going to a broker versus a lender will probably have one DPA program, if any. but you still have to fill out an application all the same. With a broker, you only fill out one application, and then we have access to
a wider range of programs. So I definitely agree. I've sent a couple people to Lana myself, and others send to Lana. But you can find your own broker as well, and that's just a great resource. And I don't believe it's going to cost anything to go to them and ask. So you can, get a lot of free information and free help to get you on your way to either your first home or just another home.
Correct. So advice is at no charge, no obligation, and even applying. We incur a small cost to pull your credit, which would be added to the closing cost once a deal closes. But other than that, it's you should take advantage.
Yeah, I agree.
Of the
Totally.
advice. Yes.
All right. So thank you, Lana, for all that great information about down payment assistance programs. Please look into this for yourself. It's one option. There are many others. Let your brokers, agents, lenders talk to you about that. I know for myself and for a lot of you, getting that down payment is just such a paralyzing factor. So that's why we wanted to talk to you today about one way to help you get into your own home. All right, guys, that's it. Hit me up in the comments with questions. Some of those questions may become episodes. Subscribe and never miss out on key information for your investment future. Remember, financial freedom is accessible. Let's get there together. Nadine, Realtor ATX, out.